Welcome to the EntrePastors podcast on YouTube. This is a show that helps pastors think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs. Well, hello there, and welcome to the EntrePastors podcast on YouTube. My name is John Sanders. I'm one of the co-founders of EntrePastors, and in this episode, we're going to be learning about how you can have significant ministry opportunities through a service-based business. You might not think of running a cleaning business as a platform for ministry, but that's exactly what it is for the guest on today's episode. Whitney Johnson has started a cleaning business. And as she's growing her business, what she is finding, specifically serving the elderly community, a community that sadly is often very lonely, taken advantage of, overlooked, as Whitney is serving that community, not only is she creating a source of income through her business, she's finding incredible inroads for ministry and impacting people with the love of Jesus. And it's such a great theme of the things that we celebrate and talk about at EntrePastors, that business is ministry. And this is going to be a great example of that. So you've got a great conversation coming your way. Thank you for taking the time to tune in and check it out. Without any further ado, let's get to the conversation with our friend Whitney Johnson. Here we go. Well, Whitney, welcome to the EntrePastors podcast. We're delighted to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. I'm excited.
Yeah, you and I got connected through Vincent Puglisi's Membership Freedom Group. He's been a great source of some connections and some guests on this show. Tell me a little bit, if you don't mind. I'm going to start with this question. What was it about our platform that interested you or kind of drew you into the work that we do as EntrePastors? And then we'll kind of go from there. But what was it that when you saw EntrePastors, you kind of were like, ooh, that's interesting?
Yeah, well, I'm a new believer. The Lord saved me about 3 years ago.
Awesome.
I grew up in the church and just never understood the Jesus piece, fully identified with God as my father, experienced a lot of church hurt, and so just closed all those doors. And then until recently, I'm kind of undoing all the church hurt baggage and have been searching. I finally found my church home here in East Tennessee and visited a bunch of other churches. And so when I saw your platform, it just struck a chord with me, because some of the previous churches I was in, there were a lot of bivocational pastors who just seemed really depleted and unsure of what to do and where to go and how to handle what God had given them. And so I think it's encouraging to see what y'all are doing, because I don't think there's anything wrong. Like, you guys preach abundance, and
yeah.
I appreciate that, and I think a lot of people could benefit from that.
Well, thank you. It's been interesting watching the work that you're doing, and in the brief time that I've known you. And I can tell that with you, I know you're not a pastor, and that's fine. We've had many people on our show who are not necessarily formal official pastors, but I can tell just in the content that you put out and the way that you show up on social media that you have a heart for ministry. And that's one of the underlying planks in our platform, if you will, and that is that ministry is not just what happens from behind a pulpit inside a church building. That business certainly can be ministry if we see it that way and execute it that way. It can all be done in service of God and other people, and can be a very real tool to impact people with the love and the truth of Jesus. And I see, just again, in the brief time I've been able to watch what you're doing, I see that in you. And it's kind of cool to hear that you're relatively new on your faith journey, or at least this part in your new life in Christ. That's pretty cool. So let's jump into some of the entrepreneurial, the business side of things a little bit, and talk about what you do, and we'll go from there. So what do you do?
Hey, John, can I ask a question before we start down that road? Because I want to hear the whole, this whole thing. But when you used the word depleted a few minutes ago, I just know that there are people on the listening end of this that struck a chord with. So can you talk, how did you, as an observer, what were some of the ways that you saw that manifested? That's an interesting word to use. I think it's an accurate word to use. So in what ways was that manifested that you observed so that somebody can hear that and know where you're coming from?
Well, I've been in meetings and conversations and prayer groups with pastors who are new and old in their field. And two examples ring a bell. One, I know of a pastor who has 5 kids. He has a beautiful family. He, they kind of scrimped and saved for a long time. And he's like, sometimes I had to count my pennies to go get a gallon of milk. And so,
Yeah.
I grew up poor, so I'm coming out of debt still. And so like, I appreciate that. But the church that I belonged to at the time had enormous resources. And so to me, there was a disconnect. And I don't think there's anything wrong like with struggling and saving our money to get to a certain point. But if our ministry is affected negatively because we think we're supposed to go without while others above us have more, that there was just a disconnect for me. And then I remember being in a prayer group with a new pastor who, his wife had just had a new baby. He had also had a toddler. He was coming into the prayer meetings early morning, just dragging. And then I would see him at the local coffee shop having business meetings. So it was interesting to see the two, like the dichotomies of you're more holy if you go to church and you're kind of on a lower level of income and you just have to work your way up, as opposed to, I know John references this all the time, that entrepreneurialism is like evil in a way. It's like, it's seen in a way where it's like, you're not supposed to have a lot and you're not godly if you're not struggling and poor.
Yeah. It's interesting to hear from the perspective of someone that's kind of in the pews, so to speak, and to see how you interpret that when you look at a pastor that's struggling, because we think, we bump into this often, that it's celebrated, that idea of kind of a pastor who's barely getting by financially. We almost put a badge of honor on that, as if it's a little bit holier than someone who's not struggling financially. Again, when you say it outright, it sounds kind of ridiculous. So no one says that part out loud. It's just kind of, we have this basic assumption that we're all operating on, and at EntrePastors, we're just starting to say it out loud and really question some of that. So, and it's encouraging. I want to connect some dots for our listeners too. I want them to be encouraged by the fact that here's Whitney, who's a fairly new believer, new to the faith in church, and she's not seeing it as a badge of honor or a badge of righteousness, pastor, for you to be broke and barely getting by. She sees the opposite of like, man, there's kind of a disconnect there when I'm sitting in a church that seems to have a lot of resources, and yet here's a pastor's family who's barely getting by.
The way I was thinking about it, John, is that there are people in vocational ministry that believe what the negative things that Whitney just described is an expectation on the part of the church members.
Good.
That's the way it should be. And here's an example, and there are many more very similar or just like Whitney, where that's not an expectation. So if you think that it is, it may be for some, but it might be something that you are putting on yourself as well.
Yeah, well said. Well, Whitney, let's jump into a little bit of your entrepreneurial story and tell us about the work that you do and kind of the journey that you're on, and then we'll explore even the membership that you're getting ready to launch. But tell us a little bit about the work that you do in the world.
Yeah, so I have a residential cleaning business and I focus on seniors. I started it about 3 years ago, and that's when kind of my whole world got turned upside down. I was leaving a really terrible situation in Reno. I decided to repent and believe and surrender to the Lord. And I felt drawn to move to Tennessee. We're originally from the Midwest, but my mom is here, and she had developed a neurological disorder. And I know the Lord used that to soften my heart, because I honestly wanted nothing to do with her before that time.
Wow.
So I came here, I had nothing but a bunch of debt. And I moved back in with my mom. And I remember having a conversation with God saying, okay, clearly I've just been such an idiot in my life and I don't know what I'm doing. So please just be show me where you want me to be. And it became clear within a few days that I was supposed to move back in with my mom in Tennessee. And I was obedient. It's not what I wanted to do, but I got to Tennessee about 3 years ago today, and I started my cleaning business a week later. And she lived kind of like in an unofficial retirement area, and she was also a hospice nurse most of my life. And I've always loved the elderly and been close with my grandparents, and so yeah, most of my clients have since starting this have been older. So, and there's such a need for it.
Well, okay, so there's a couple directions I want to go with this. So you're in debt. You're coming off. There's been a major turning point in your life. You're rebuilding in some ways, starting at least financially, kind of below ground zero. You've got work to do, and that, I'm only saying that, highlighting that, because again, that's going to resonate with people in our audience for different. The details may look different, but the end result is still the same. Like, man, how do I get out of this hole? And I noticed you didn't say that you went to work for, Walmart for $11 an hour. You started your own business. Tell us a little bit of that story. Like, why did you decide to go into business for yourself? Why did you decide on cleaning? Like, I'd just be curious to pick your brain on that some.
Yeah, and I left out a little piece. I just love how God works. It's really humbling. There was a small restaurant in my mom's neighborhood, and I had waited tables in Chicago for years, and in really nice like fine dining places, and I knew that this little place I wouldn't be making any money, but I felt comfortable there, and I felt drawn to it for some reason, and everyone was trying to dissuade me, and I knew it wasn't logical. I was like, I need to go there. I felt drawn there. A week after working there, I was waiting tables with a 75-year-old woman who's super spunky, and she told me that she cleaned houses on the side. And she's like, I'm making $30 an hour cleaning houses on the side. I can give you some supplies, because I didn't have money to even buy supplies at that point.
Yeah.
So immediately I was like, this is why I'm here, to meet this woman and to start this business. And so that's how I started. So
Okay.
I'd been working at the restaurant for about 3 weeks, and then that's when I started my cleaning business.
And so you jumped in basically to make more money as an entrepreneur than you're making as a W-2 employee. And tell us about that journey. How has the business, you're only 3 years into it, but how's business going? And I also, as you tell the story, how did you decide? I want to talk a little bit about the idea of niching down to, I heard you say you do residential cleaning for senior citizens. So how did you kind of carve out that niche and decide to go there instead of just being a generic, I do anything, I do commercial cleaning, office buildings, whatever? Tell a little bit of that story of niching down.
Well, it took some time. I mean, I honestly was coming out of an abusive situation. I had PTSD, and I felt safer around seniors. I didn't want to be around my peers. And so, and I know the Lord just dropped me there. It took, as I was recovering over the course of about a year, I just had a handful of clients, and it was really uncomfortable. And I think that's a pain point to pay attention to, because it's, as you know, it's not easy being an entrepreneur, and the odds are definitely stacked against us. But if we can get comfortable in being uncomfortable and knowing that we'll have to pivot and shift a lot, I think going into that, it's easier to just stay on the course. And I honestly was considering going back to get my master's in education. For about 6 or 8 weeks, I was subbing with special needs kids, and I felt drawn. I was like, maybe the Lord is leading me to do this. And it became very clear He was closing all of those doors. And at the same time, I had people in my family and some of my clients telling me, no, go get a degree. It's better to not clean toilets. Like, you shouldn't be doing that. You already have, your bachelor's. So there were a lot of people trying to dissuade me from continuing with this business. And So I kept going because it became, throughout this whole time, I was just trying to be obedient because I hadn't done that before. And I knew that God's will was way better than my own. So I just kind of inched along. I had, 3 or 4 clients starting off. Like a year and a half ago, I found a mentor online, Ken Carfagno. He has Solo Elite and Smart Cleaning School. And I was just at a point where I had maybe like 10 or 12 clients, and I was just running myself into the ground. I had helped people with their small businesses before, but I just didn't know what I was doing. I can work really hard, but I tend to work harder than smarter. And so I just was like, okay, I give up. I don't know what I'm doing. I need help. And so since that time, since about 16, 18 months ago, I have doubled my revenue and tripled my profit. And so now, so Ken Carfagno's cleaning model, when I started, was to make $50K in profit a year, working 2 to 3 days a week. Wow. Which I immediately was like, that's not real. It's real. I'm doing it.
Okay. And see, there's so much I want to celebrate in this because, again, even though the details of your path and story are a little different, that's what we encourage pastors to do is go start a business. There's much more profitability in that. But I also love the fact that you're being transparent about the struggle, how you kind of bumped into this. You didn't have this clear plan from the beginning of I'm going to go start this business and grow it to this certain level of success. As entrepreneurs, often we kind of muddle our way through, man. We just start and we look back on those early days and go, oh my goodness, like that was a rough start. And yet it's part of the story. It's part of what brings us to where we are. So I just want people to kind of feel that, celebrate that, sit in that for a minute. But okay, so then here's a question. What was it about, and I don't want you to give away all of Ken's secrets or any of his secret sauce in the coaching that he does. Well, let me just pause to say this. I want people not to miss this. After you got kind of to the end of your rope of just working harder and doing it all on your own and trying to figure it out, you invested into a coach, and all of a sudden now you're making more money than you ever thought you could. You're working less in terms of hours. And so I just want people to see that and connect the dot, because Whitney, you may not know this, but we bump into this often in our community where a pastor knows they need the help, but then they go, I can't afford it. I'm broke. I'm in debt. And you were kind of in that same situation and you still made. So let me just pause and ask you to speak to that. I think I want to open up that a layer there and say, talk to the person has all the reasons why they shouldn't hire the coach, buy the course, make that investment into themselves because they're already in debt. They're struggling to get by, whatever their reasons are. What would you say to encourage them? It's worth it to get the right tribe around you, to get the right mentor around you. What would you say to encourage them?
I would say, I think it's a matter of pride when we don't move forward. And that kind of sounds backwards in a lot of ways, because I know it's easy to puff ourselves up, but I was following the Dave Ramsey model, and I think that's beneficial to a point. Had I not invested in myself, I would not be so close to paying off my debt right now. And again, it's uncomfortable. And, our family and friends and the world tells us, don't do that. Just keep going, keep your head down. You want the security of a paycheck and benefits. I've never cared about that. It's never appealed to me. So yeah, it's not easy, but I think if you want to move forward, it's still going to be uncomfortable. I mean, it took me a year and a half to get to this point. But you have to start somewhere, and it's better to start now than to prolong whatever pain you're in now.
Yeah. So I'm reading between the lines, but I don't want to assume. What I'm hearing you say is, even though you very much were a Dave Ramsey kind of disciple to a large degree, you maybe broke ranks with what Dave would have recommended in that moment to say, don't invest in a coach. You need to put everything toward that debt snowball and just keep throwing everything at that, and don't put money at this other thing. Is that a fair summary of what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it can be a crippling model in some ways.
Yes.
Like if you're not, yeah.
I agree, and we love Dave Ramsey. I respect deeply the work that he does. Our friend, Les and I, our mutual friend and mentor, Dan Miller, he and Dave were great friends, but Dan did not see eye to eye with all things Dave Ramsey. Like where Dan would absolutely applaud what you did, even though you were in debt and had it kind of a financial mess to clean up. If you have a realistic expectation of a return on that investment, you make the investment all day long and you don't get caught up in the kind of the more legalistic rule of a debt snowball or whatever. And I'm not saying any of that to trash Dave Ramsey, but in my own coaching, I've met people that are just so hardcore disciples of Dave Ramsey. They have a hard time switching from that, a little bit of that scarcity of I'm pinching every penny, giving every dollar a name to be able to name some of those dollars for investment into themselves. And again, you need to be careful with that. I recognize that, but I'm applauding that decision that you made to invest. And I want to connect the dots. You're further along financially because of it than you would have been had you kind of kept following the rigid rules. So you can say anything more to that you want, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think I appreciate Dave Ramsey as well, obviously, but I think his material is a bit dated, especially I don't think it applies to entrepreneurs. If you're gonna just collect a paycheck, then you're way more limited than you are as an entrepreneur. And so that model makes sense. Yeah. But it's not logical because I've made way more money not following that model. And for some people it works and that's great. But if you want to get ahead and get there faster, you absolutely need to invest in yourself. And I think Vincent's always said, you pay to get to the front of the line.
Yeah. So moving ahead, then I want to go back to what I was starting to ask you, and that's without giving away any of Ken's secret sauce or whatever that he's teaching. Like, can you give us maybe just one or two principles? What did he help you see that broke you out of that pattern of simply trading your time for money and really becoming more profitable? Like, what are some of the pointers that Ken helped you see that caused you to show up a little differently in your business?
Yeah, his number one thing is knowing your numbers. So, I mean, I would track what I would make from each client, how many days of work I was, how many days a week I was working, what I would spend on supplies. So I had like a loose profit and loss sheet. But he has an engineering background. And so he's got these awesome spreadsheets where you just plug stuff in. And I mean, I thought I was making 30, 35 an hour. I was making 20.
Yep.
So, and it's humbling when you realize you have a different, mentality of what you're like, oh, I probably make this. But until you know your numbers, you don't know what's going on. You don't know what kind of business you're actually running.
Yeah. Well, so taking that a step farther, know your numbers, but then when the numbers show you what they show you, essentially you have to charge more, right? Because
and that's the hard thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So walk us through that, because we bump into this a lot, Whitney, of our pastors and ministry minded people who are now starting a business really struggle to, and I don't think this is just limited to pastors, but they really do struggle to value themselves and the work that they're doing and to charge adequately. And so what was that like for you when you recognized I need to charge more money? Take us into some of the thoughts, feelings, emotions around that whole thing of when you started to have to charge more for the work that you were doing.
Yeah, it was very emotional, and I struggled with it initially because I love my clients and I went into this business mentally as a ministry. But I think there's a way to balance ministry and business. And I think, we're not called to be slaves. We're not supposed to worship money, obviously, but we have the mind of Christ, so we can be logical and rational about things. So, honestly, the numbers, like knowing your numbers, takes the emotion out of things. So it took me some time, like when you can look at, a P&L and say objectively, that's what I'm making, but this is what I actually need to make. So it's a matter of being logical and then recognizing I'm being a people pleaser on this level, and that's not working for anyone. So,
did you lose clients when you started to increase your costs? Did you have people go, I can't pay that?
Definitely. Yeah.
And then I'm assuming you had some that just said, okay, cool. And they paid you what you were requiring, correct?
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. I lost a handful of clients, but because, I mean, I value the work that I do and I do a great job. And so there's just such a huge lack of trustworthy cleaners that people recognized what I was doing. And for the most part, they were fine with the price increase. So,
yep.
Hey, John, can I speak to something? That's a great lesson that's tucked away in there that I want to make sure people hear. And that is, this translates into a lot of other business models. And that is when you get caught up in a race to the bottom, chances are you'll get there. And anytime that you make a decision like Whitney described, that's more of a longer game. Okay, you're making a choice not to just chase the dollars. And you and I both been there, John. So we know what that feels like and what it looks like and the sense of urgency that goes along with it. But if you can make those, even though it's not a ton of decisions, it's just a few decisions that feel very hard at the time because our fears get involved, right? And we think of what's worst case scenario, and rarely do things ever play out like that. Almost never do they play out like that. So it's a longer game, but this is a great example of witness some decisions that you made for the sake of creating the life, that you really want to create. And the business part of it was just one of the things that helped you get there. A big part probably, but just one of the things that helped you get there. But I would suspect that even before the revenue occurred, you were much healthier as a person having made that decision, even though short term it meant that there was a cost involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it's honestly, it's liberating when you take that leap. You take that
sure
leap.
Is.
And it's of course uncomfortable, but I mean, we're not called to be comfortable here. So
right. But it is liberating. It's I love that word for that. Yeah.
Yeah, this is such a common trajectory that we see pastors go through. Again, it's probably just a people thing in when it all boils down to it, but it's people who have a heart for service. If we're not careful, we'll get caught up in that narrative of, man, if I charge more, we start seeing things as a win-lose, like I'm gaining something, they're losing something, instead of recognizing the win-win. And I want to connect this dot real quick as well, Whitney, to something you just said about the trustworthy factor. So often in the service-based space, I don't care what the service is, but when you are in someone's home providing a service, there is such a shortage of people who show up professionally in a trustworthy manner with integrity and do quality work. And this is where we preach to our community all the time, Whitney, that you as pastors and ministry professionals, like, you have an unfair advantage in the marketplace if you bring that same skill set that you do ministry with and you come out into the marketplace. You're going to thrive, and you're making that case. I want people to hear that, because I don't think they always believe us, because again, we've been taught inside the church world to kind of like really devalue our time and our efforts. I want them to recognize people will be willing to pay for that. Not everybody, but I love what you just said. When you get caught up in a race to the bottom, chances are you'll get there. You're going to see that on a social media real soon.
Well, here's something else that's true. When you provide a premium product and you make a choice between a premium product and doing something for somebody that has a great need that can't really pay that premium product, those things are not mutually exclusive, right? So I would also venture to say that when I'll do this in my ghostwriting business, John, and I know that you do it with your handyman Dakota Small Jobs as well. So when you are able to provide a premium product for a premium price, then that creates, if you're doing it well and showing some wisdom, that creates some margin in your life as well. To when a person comes along that you resonate with and you feel God stirring your heart to reach out and help that person and provide that same premium product or service, but for less of a cost to that individual, because they're not at the place that they're able to go to that premium level, that premium price, you can do it still because you've got margin built in your life now that you can show generosity in lots of different ways, including that one. And so, and then when you do it for kind of the love of the game, you can do that with joy. Do it, not begrudgingly, not, well, I'll do it, but they can't pay. And you can do it with joy because God's providing through other means. Another.
Yep, that's so good and true. And it's generosity is on. What's that, Les? Oh, sorry about that. I'll have to edit that out. Yeah, generosity is on our terms. As we've heard some people say in our life that it does feel good to be generous, but when that's coming from your own heart of giving versus someone expecting that of you, and how can you think to charge that much for the work that you're doing? Whitney, here's a question I have for you. Did you battle any did you feel sorry for yourself at all as you went out cleaning? Because I know, again, you talked about going back to school and getting a master's degree, and in our culture, we celebrate the person with the master's degree. Man, that's something. The person who's out cleaning a bathroom, not so much. So did you battle any of that, like self-image or kind of feeling sorry for myself? Look at me out here cleaning when I'm this highly educated person and could be doing something else or not. And the reason I ask is because I did for a brief minute, and I had to coach myself around it. But what about you?
I did not. I regret getting a degree. Honestly, I have I paid for my education and I have a degree in fine arts. So that was just a total waste of time and money. And I discourage people from going to school unless it's absolutely necessary. And I didn't feel sorry for myself. I thought I played the victim card my whole life up until I was saved. And so thank God for that. But a lot of people felt sorry for me, which I was laughing the whole time because I sometimes clean 8 to 10 hours a day, and I have my headphones on and I'm listening to sermons and audiobooks and learning. So it was the perfect combination for me.
Yeah. No, and again, I didn't stay in that place of self-pity very long, but I'm not lying. For a minute, I felt that way when the first day I kind of set out, and it felt scary. I felt, man, what am I doing here? I'm trying this little handyman thing. I just needed some extra cash flow, and I had heard enough doing these interviews with some pastors who had leaned into that service-based stuff. Like, if you're willing to pick up a tool, a cleaning product, whatever, and actually provide a service for someone, there is a quick access to money. Like, you can make money fairly quickly and make a lot more of it than if you're just working for someone else. So I heard enough to kind of know that. And, but yeah, for just a brief minute, I kind of dealt with that. But I don't feel sorry for myself anymore. Like, it's been a good journey. And I didn't stay in that spot for too long, but well, hey, let's do this. Let's shift gears briefly and talk about the membership community. You and I met inside of Vincent Puglisi's group about how to build membership communities. So tell us a little bit about the community that you're wanting to build. How does that tie in with what you're doing now? Maybe it doesn't, but tell us that story real quick.
Yeah, it totally ties in, and it was unexpected. Everything clicked probably about 6 months ago. So because most of my clients are seniors in this particular area in East Tennessee, people move into these gorgeous, $1 million homes, and they're expecting their kids and grandkids to come visit, and they don't. So they're struggling with cognitive decline, with dementia, so many of my clients are, in and out of surgeries, they have cancer, and all of their neighbors are going through the same thing. And my own mother has a neurological disorder. My grandma has dementia. And so I kind of realized that God was just showing me that there's a need. And my membership is called Silver Linings, and I want to teach people how to help their parents age with dignity. And it's, there's logistics involved of, estate attorneys and taxes and bank accounts and medical, but a lot of it is around grief and how, we're commanded to honor our parents. And I know firsthand how challenging that is. So.
Awesome. Is your membership launched yet, or when is that going to kick off?
Yeah, I'll be launching in October. Okay. Yeah, so Whitney Silver Linings at Gmail or Facebook, and I'll be updating everything on Facebook. So.
Okay. Fantastic. One last thing I'll share, and then I'm going to ask you just to say that contact info again if someone wants to get in touch with you. But as you were talking, this thought literally just popped into my head. Just last week, I went out on a estimate to give an estimate for my handyman business for a repeat customer. And this gal is in kind of her later season of life. She just buried her 90-something-year-old mother, she had hired us a while back to kind of help move her mom from one residential setting to another. And now here she is now, kind of sort of free. Her kids live all over the country and other parts of the world. Her husband died 6 years ago. And now here she is sitting here looking around her beautiful home going, I don't even know if I want to stay here. She took me out in her garage, showed me this motor home that she's got. She wants to travel and do all this stuff. And she's just sitting here saying, I don't know what to do. And all of a sudden, John's handyman business turns life coaching. She's a believer. And we just sat and had a conversation where I just helped her unpack some of that. I listened. I kind of gave her some ideas. And then here, I want people to hear this is what entrepreneurs do. Entrepreneurs see opportunity. Because as she started talking, I said, well, I mean, if you want, she's like, I don't even know how I'd get rid of all this stuff. And I said, well, if you want, I said, we can help you figure that out. I said, I'm sure we could come up with some kind of a arrangement that's a win for both of us where it's worth our time for my company to come in here and we'll sell all your stuff for you. Like on Marketplace, we'll help you get rid of it. We'll help you move it. She's like, you would do that for me? And I said, well, yeah, I mean, we can certainly, I said, I'm open to having that conversation. And I said, I don't want you to rush and make any, impulsive choices. So let's think about this for a while, but it's just an opportunity. Like, I don't know, is that going to turn into income for our business? Quite likely. Yes. And if it does, will we be providing a very valuable service to an elderly person who doesn't really have that support system right here to lean into? And I know she can trust us. I'm not going to take advantage of her. So I'm just telling that story because I want our audience to hear when you see a need in the marketplace, you lean into that and just see what doors God opens up with that. There's all kinds of ways to go out and serve people and do it as ministry and also to make profit while you do it. So, and also, Whitney, you could probably speak to this. We're going to soon, in the days to come, I mean, we're here right now, we're going to see this baby boomer generation aging out. Like there's going to be a huge spike in the need for the very thing that you're talking about as the largest, portion of our population is coming into those senior citizen years than we've ever seen in modern history. So, I think you're presenting yourself or getting set up for being a huge support to people who need what you have to offer. So I love that.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think right now I'm just very interested in collecting stories from people because I can talk to my clients and my clients' kids all day about aging in place and how to declutter and clean properly. But I mean, when it's my own family, there's a big emotional and mental block that can prevent me from seeing things as they should be. Yeah. And so this is about coming together as a community and sharing and encouraging each other to care for our parents properly. So
I love that. So tell us again, if somebody wants to connect with you, either for the cleaning side of things or even this new membership you've got going, what's the best way for them? Where would you like them to connect with you and reach out?
Yeah, you can email me at whitneysilverlinings@gmail.com or message me on Facebook at Whitney Silver Linings.
All right. We'll put the links to those in the show notes of this episode so that people can contact you. And Whitney, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to come on the show and share your story. And thank you for the work that you're doing in the world. We applaud it and we'll continue to celebrate you as you move forward.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your guys' time.
Well, hey, thanks for watching this episode of the EntrePastors podcast. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can be notified every time we release a new episode. If you'd like to get connected to other pastors who are learning to think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs, then we invite you to check us out on Facebook. Just search for the EntrePastors Connect group answer a few of our simple questions there, and we'd love to include you in the conversations. And if you're really ready to go to the next level, then we invite you to join our EntrePastors membership community. When you become a monthly subscriber, you will receive access to courses, exclusive community, and coaching that will help you along in your own EntrePastors journey. If there's anything else we can do to serve you, please visit us at EntrePastors.com, and we will do our best to serve you there. God bless everybody. See you soon.